Well, hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Chaos to Peace podcast, where I talk about how clutter is so much more than you think. Thank you so much for allowing me back into your ears. Well, hello, my friend. Welcome to the podcast. I am Conny, your host. And today I'm very excited to welcome Shawn Lemon as a guest. Shawn is the founder of the Digital Organizer and has spent the last 17 years helping individuals and businesses get better at using their technology. I invited him to the podcast to talk with us about digital clutter and digital organizing. Shawn, like me, encourages people to start small. He says to identify one area where this organization steals their time the most and then schedule 30 minutes per week on their calendar to make it a little bit better. That sounds so much like my a few minutes a day keeps the chaos away approach, doesn't it? He also says to remember that every minute we spend getting organized today is time saved tomorrow and the next day and the next. That again sounds like what I call investing time instead of spending or wasting time. I really had a great conversation with Shawn. We also talked about his process of organizing the email inbox and why unsubscribing from newsletters is so crucial. The risk of not handling your passwords in a secure way, that is a big topic. And he shares a story of a client of his who lost his entire business because he got hacked. And he lost his income, $500,000 a year, because his business got hacked. So this is no joke. We do need to keep our passwords secure, and while 90% of people think they do, most of them don't. So make sure you listen in to what Shawn has to say about that. We also talk about the mental clutter that we have to get rid of in order to create a calmer digital environment for ourselves. And as I always joke, everything starts in the mind. Everything starts with mental clutter. We have to let go of certain limiting beliefs or of certain things we think, oh, we are this way, we can't change ourselves, or we always did it this way and we don't want to change things. Well, Shawn and I talk about how we need to let go of some of that mental clutter in order to move from chaos to peace. And at the end, we also talk about what we need to do to keep the digital files organized once our system is all set up and ready to be used. It's not enough to just, like I always say, declutter once and then think, oh, now I'm decluttered. I say a lot, decluttering is not an event, it's a journey, and it's the same with digital clutter. So Shawn shares his point of view, what we need to do if we want to stay in a digital organized environment. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into this awesome conversation with Shawn Lemon, the digital organizer. Welcome, Shawn, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you as a guest. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the topic. But first, so I always ask my guests two questions in the beginning. I start with one for you. Where in the world are you located? Because my audience is international, so I want to know where you're located. So I'm thinking they might want to know too.
Yeah, we're in the Nashville, Tennessee area in a little town called Franklin.
Oh, nice. Yes, Nashville, Tennessee. So country music land.
Yes, the land of country music for sure. It's a beautiful place. We got a lot of people moving here. It's a popular place right now.
Yeah, yeah. So, and the second question I usually ask is, what is one thing that is surprising about you that people don't necessarily know or that people are surprised to hear? But for you, the question is a bit different because in your bio, I read that you're making pottery. So I want to know
Yes.
more about making pottery.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love it. I grew up thinking that I wasn't creative at all because my brother was the one who played piano. The neighbor like took attention to him to teach him oil painting and stuff like that. And I just never had the attention span to sit there and draw. And then being a perfectionist, hearing myself play horribly on an instrument was really difficult. And so I kind of like threw up all the creative things and just thought it wasn't really for me until I just got an idea of, I wonder if I would like doing pottery, making pottery. And then I was gifted lessons for Christmas one year because my wife heard me talk about that a long time back, and then finally came up, and I took lessons and immediately became totally obsessed and realized this is something that I will never stop doing in my life. I absolutely love it. I've got a little Etsy shop that I sell stuff on, and it's cool. It's a really fun outlet to create beautiful stuff and have it all in my home.
Oh, I love it. I've never had anybody that is a potter that makes pottery on a podcast. When I was in Switzerland just recently, we didn't do pottery, but we did paint on
Uh-huh.
pottery,
Oh,
and
cool.
as a with a client of mine as a team event, and it was
Uh-huh.
really cool. I haven't done anything like it before. I think I'm
Yeah.
creative, but yeah, it's a cool element, pottery, right? And I would think it's a good balance to what you're usually doing, like what we're also
Yes.
talking about here in the podcast, about all that
Yeah.
digital, the digital world, the digital chaos, and all that. And then you can go and hands on get your hands
Yeah.
dirty.
Yeah, I mean you don't get too much more grounding than having your hands in clay and just focused on these bits of clay in your hand, and man, it's really great to just hone in on something and focus so closely because at every stage in the process, you could destroy it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of high risk, and I found that that's in some ways I'm a risk taker, in other ways not so much.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason in business, I'm not as much of a risk taker, and yet I'll do downhill skateboarding, motorcycle riding, things like that, and it's always been about speed for me and something to really kind of keep me engaged and have a little bit of a risk.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds interesting when you say it's high risk, but what I also heard is that you really have to focus, and that's probably something that comes very handy in our world where what did they say? We have a attention span less than a goldfish or whatever is the
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
right? And so
Right.
you're actually training yourself to be focused on something, which probably comes in very handy when you're then going back to the online world, um,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
your brain knows already how to focus better
And
than most of us.
yeah, and it's nice to just be able to focus on one thing at a
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
If we're processing email, how many different things are you being exposed to every time you open
Yeah,
up email? When
yeah,
you're on a website, you're getting hammered with ads. I mean, I have ad blockers, so,
yeah,
and it's amazing. I should look at that sometime. I recently saw something, it's like the hundreds of thousands of ads that they've blocked,
yeah,
in a short period of time. It's just wild, and to think like I can just sit here and just relax into looking and focusing on one thing, and not bouncing all over the place. It's really therapeutic.
yeah. And here we are in the middle of the topic, right? Like with all the
Exactly.
digital clutter
Chaos
and
to peace,
chaos.
whether it's in a physical space or digital, we're
Yeah.
on the same page here.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really very overwhelming because I noticed about myself. So
Uh,
I tend to be a very focused person. I
yeah.
have this, I don't want to call it gift, maybe it's a skill, to actually really focus. But even I started to realize that I'm jumping sometimes,
Hmm.
like from this to
Yep.
that, or I come back to something, go, oh yeah, I was actually working on this. And this really, like, I'm very intentionally um, work against it so that I'm again more
Yes.
focused. But I think when we're not really intentional and are aware of what happens to us, then we're just lost in the overwhelm. And in the digital world, like I always say, like physical clutter is kind of, at least you trip over it, you fall over it, you see it constantly.
Right.
The digital clutter is so much more mean in a way, like, and also
Yeah, it's like insidious. It's just so pervasive because it's happening in everywhere we look, in your
Hmm.
email, on your desktop, your downloads folder, your to-do lists. I mean, how many different to-do lists do you have, listeners, in here?
Yeah.
Like, you got stuff spread out all over the place. It's hard. And there's a reason why we're bouncing from thing to thing. It's because we're overwhelmed, and that's what this is all about, whether it's digital organization or physical organization. It's being able to recognize that we've got stuff that's really taking our attention and it's causing higher levels of anxiety. It's affecting our mental health. Our physical health is directly related to how we are feeling mentally.
Hmm.
And we have to calm that and stop the compulsive behavior by removing notifications, stopping the tide of emails from marketers coming in, using ad blockers, consolidating things in one place so that we're not having to bounce around as much and we can create as much focus and clarity as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think too is like compared to the physical clutter, it's also like physical clutter, you almost have more control over how much really comes at you compared to
Right.
the digital, even though you do have the ways you just also mentioned, right? We do have certain control over the digital clutter that comes in our life, but not as much as we would have in
Well,
or
it's like, think
we
about
used.
email.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm,
know, we think our email is our account. Is it really our account?
mm-hmm,
When your email address is being sold over and over again, and you just now it's to the point where you just go to an e-commerce site, and next thing you know, you leave the page and you get an email, "Hey, where did you go? I saw
mm-hmm.
you were looking at, this sweater."
Yeah.
It's just, I didn't give you permission to email me. Like, yeah. So we're definitely passionate about helping people get that under control and really turning email back into an effective communication tool, so that we stop and get control as much as possible, knowing that we'll never have complete control, but we can make it a heck of a lot better than it is. Way,
Yeah.
way better.
Yeah. So I want to get back to that, but just one quick question before. How
Hmm.
did you even get into this? Were you the person who was themselves very overwhelmed with all this digital clutter, and that's how you got into it because you figured it out for yourself? Or were you kind of like the unicorn that just could do it from the beginning really well, and
Yeah.
you're telling people now how you do it so they can do it too?
Hmm. Well, I had a foundation really young with my dad making sure that we knew how to use technology and the technical stuff of if I'd ask how something works, then he would kind of just bring it right back at me, unknowingly kind of using the Socratic method of like, what do you think? And you figure it out and kind of helping lead me
Hmm.
there. And I think you just naturally have to have a little bit of an interest in the technical to nerd out about this stuff and get into it. So that was a nice foundation. But then I had a lot of time on my hands when I started an internship for a video post-production studio, and I got my first Mac. And with that time and with a lot of interest, because I liked computers and I had this new shiny Mac that I really wanted to learn and I had the time for it, I dove in and I learned everything that I could about it. And that led me to a job at the Apple Store. And because I'm a teacher, they immediately set me up with, almost immediately at least, set me up with a job teaching people how to use their tech. And I just saw so many people overwhelmed by the digital mess, having a hard time. Like, people have a hard time learning in the midst of chaos. Some can bull right through it. You see a lot of entrepreneurs, they can just handle the mess and go right through it, and they're just driven by their end goal, and it's frustrating, but I'll get there. But there are a lot of people, especially in supporting roles, who get really overwhelmed by clutter and can't move past and really be productive and focused through it. And so I started this business because no one else was doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for sure needed. I think so too that a lot of people kind of just throw their hands in the air and think, oh, I'm
Hmm.
just not doing anything and I'm just like dealing with the chaos and kind of keeping it at bay as good as I can, and the rest
Yeah.
we just leave,
Yeah.
right? Where
Yeah.
when you could you by investing some time. I always say like invest some time to later save time, right? So
Yeah.
instead of setting the systems up really well. So since we're sticking with email, I mean there is all these people already. You could Google it, like get to inbox zero and all this
Right, right.
and
Yeah.
how to do it. So I'm pretty good with email, but I'm a dinosaur. I always say like I still use Outlook, and I
Sure.
have my system where I have
Uh-huh.
it sorted all manually. But I think you have tools to help like that help you. Talk a little bit about where people could start, for example, with email, other than manually how Connie does it. I always say I burn the candle on both ends. I unsubscribe
Hmm.
and unsubscribe this just this
Yeah.
morning from all
Yeah.
this stuff that I never asked for. And
Hmm.
I also have it tagged and I have it flagged and I have it sorted. So, but
Yeah.
talk a little bit how you do it because I do it different.
Yeah, so I try and keep it as simple as possible. Like I just do not have the patience or the time
Mm-hmm.
to create a whole filing system to keep up with email.
Mm-hmm.
So I approach email from the perspective of I have to have a place to store files that come into me or any information or attachments or anything that I need to save, I need to have a place for that. And it shouldn't belong in email because for me, email is a communication tool.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also not a to-do list. So if I have something important that I can't take action on right away, that needs to go into my task or project management software. And personally, I use Asana. So I have a system of three things that are feeding into each other constantly. Communication, so typically email, but we've got other ways that we communicate as well.
Mm-hmm.
File storage and file management, and I want one place to find everything. And then project management, and again, only one place to store my list of to-dos for my work stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the starting place, which allows me to not have to have an organization system for my files. Because if it's important, it gets saved somewhere else. And if I ever need to reference it again, I will know because I'm looking for something specific how to search for it. And the fact is, like, I used to save tons and tons of folders or have all these folders for all the different emails. And then I spent way more time managing a system than I did actually processing the emails. So that's kind of the introduction. And sorry, this is a long answer. But then after that, if I'm going to take someone through and say overhaul them, we want to paint that picture first. But then let's declare email bankruptcy and say, 30, everything older than 30 days, let's get rid of that out of the inbox. And now let's archive the things and trash the last 30 days. Let's process that. And the biggest part of it is actually manually unsubscribing and not using tools to do it because the tools are not as effective. Because Connie, when you hit unsubscribe, and if you wait for that page to load, if you're, especially if it's a retail company, you'd say, oh, Old Navy is the worst. Someone signed me up. They used my email address for a receipt.
Mm-hmm.
I got added to like 20 different lists of
Oh
Old
gosh.
Navy stuff
Mm-hmm.
and different brands and offshoots that they had. It was horrible. I unsubscribed, and I had to go to this page and unsubscribe from so many different places.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to wait for those pages to load to fully unsubscribe from everything. And that is a project.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to do that all in one sitting and just get that work out of the way. And then it's just when you have a new offender in the inbox, you just unsubscribe from it, wait for it to load and stay on top of it. And that's how I've got a 20-year-old Gmail account almost that is totally, totally usable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great account and works absolutely perfectly. And I don't get stuff that I don't want in that account.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's unsubscribing from things, it's responding immediately, and then snoozing emails for a time that I know that I'll be able to handle it in the future if it's not something that should really go into my project management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I actually like that you say that there are these tools or the automatic tools don't really work that well because
Yeah.
uh, like a lot of people, or the pushback I get when I help people with stuff like that. Oh,
Hmm.
I just sign up for that tool that I saw an advertisement for and that it
Yeah.
handles it for me. And I always say like, but you don't know what it's really doing and whether it's really
You
doing
really
the
don't.
job.
It
And
it'll just stop working sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and I do actually, and I didn't mention this, but I use an app or a service called SaneBox, SANE. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it because it will sort my emails for me. So
Hmm.
I have a few newsletters. I think that everyone should be ruthless with newsletters and sales and stuff that you're interested in. You can always sign up for this stuff later.
Yeah.
If you don't consistently read it and it's not really adding value to your life, every time you get an email from them, you need to get rid of it
Yeah.
because we don't have enough time for this. So I have a few things, and those get sorted into a folder called later. And then everything financially related or purchases and like shipping notifications and stuff like that, all of those get filtered out of the inbox automatically and they go to my financial folder
Mm.
because, I order stuff on Amazon. Sorry for anyone who doesn't like it. But
I
you
think we
you
all
get
do,
a
even the ones that say they don't.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, you get so many emails
Hmm.
and they're not even like that all that useful because you don't even see what order it's for. So all of
Exactly.
that gets filtered out of the inbox because I don't need that vying for my attention. So that is one automation tool, but you need to use it carefully. By the
Mm.
way, all this stuff that I'm sharing about the declaring email bankruptcy, unsubscribing, using SaneBox and stuff, I've got a free thing that I'm giving away with this podcast. It's thedigitalorganizer.com/chaos to peace. If you download our file organization guide, I'm going to give you videos on how to do all this stuff. So you don't have to like pause this or take notes or anything. I'm actually just going to give you the whole process so you can follow right along with it.
Yeah, awesome that you mention it because wanted to talk about that in the end, and then
Yeah,
I will put the link in the show notes so people find it right away, which is
perfect.
very important. Yeah, so I totally agree, but I often get the pushback, and I'm really wondering whether you
Yeah.
don't get that pushback too. Because when I say to people, well, you can just unsubscribe, you can delete it, nobody cares. It
Uh-huh.
probably has no value to your life. And then they say, yeah, but unless I read it, I don't know whether there is value. So I have to keep them all and read them all. And
Hmm.
I even had a
Hmm.
client once who would print them all out and pile them
Yeah.
in her office
Hmm.
to read them later. And it's just, I mean, yeah, in a way, it's this FOMO, right? The fear of missing
Yeah.
out, that if you don't read this specific email, you're going to miss out. And you only know whether you're going to miss out if you actually read the email. And that's how people, I think, end up with 18,000 emails in their inbox in Gmail or whatever
Yeah.
crazy
Hmm.
numbers I see online sometimes. And they're even proud of it. So now, what are you
Sure.
saying to this pushback, Shawn?
Well, it's I think we all have to realize that the digital organization, physical organization, this stuff is really a mental game. In the end, there are some really technical things that you might need help with if you're trying to like move a really established Google Drive account using My Drive into a new system of shared drives. You're probably going to run into some technical issues. But besides that, what we're really talking about are files and folders, unsubscribing from emails, deleting stuff, and figuring out a routine that works. But we all have beliefs and we all have routines and we have these mental pathways that are well established that can be hard to release. And so recognizing that, addressing it, and then saying, okay, so if we miss that, what happens?
Yeah.
What happens if you miss that deal? Well, I don't, save the extra money. Did you really need that code in the first place? Did you really need this? Are you at a time that you need to be shopping? Like, what happens if it just goes away? And what would it look like if you weren't constantly tethered to emails and you didn't feel the constant need and pull to this? Would you have more mental energy?
Hmm.
I mean, is it really adding that much value to your life? Is it creating that big of a difference on your wallet? And just starting and to ask these questions. And if the answer is yes, okay, great. And sometimes we do have people, yes, I need this, I need this, I need this, and say, okay, well, how about we do an experiment and let's move them over here in the meantime, and uh, and we'll see if you actually read them in next session. Like, what about
Hmm.
this? And and often we'll have people who end up hanging on to things for a while. The next session and the session after, they realize this really doesn't matter. If you really just start pushing and have them ask themselves the question, then in the end, it's like, you know what? I can let this stuff go. And that's a lot of what we're having to do is help support people in the process of letting go and realizing that just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
And other, cliches like that.
Well, yeah, but there's always some truth in that cliche, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
that's exactly it. And it's often also these email offers, since we're at that topic, they're often creating the demand in you, or the not the desire in you, not the demand. They often create the desire in you that you want it, even though before you never even wanted it. So
Right.
this is, if you want to live intentionally, and maybe you want to manage your money intentionally and manage your household intentionally, it's probably not the best idea to constantly going on this roller coaster. Oh, I want this now, I want this one, I want this one,
Mhm.
and then filling your house with clutter, filling your inbox with clutter and all that. I totally
Yeah,
get
I
it.
mean, it's it, you know, you've got I read this book called The Anxious Generation. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it just recently, I think 2 or 3 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming really popular right now,
Hmm.
but they're talking about the science behind, phones and social media and games and stuff on the effects of kids growing up. Because now that we've had, the iPhone came out in what, 2007?
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, July of 2007. So we got plenty of years behind us to really look and see what the effects are and study this, and it's not good. Um, But we have, especially girls, who are doing the whole comparison thing online and with social media, and just I think a lot of people in general with social media are a lot more unhappy because they're seeing the best of everything else. They're seeing these ads, and copywriters are just incredible at compelling people to feel the need for whatever they're trying to sell. So
Hmm.
the more we're exposing ourselves to these things, and the more we're seeing all of this stuff, the more we start comparing, saying, why don't I have that? Or I want this. And
Hmm.
the fact, I mean, the question is, did you need it before you saw it, before you saw the ad for it?
Yeah. That's exactly what
Um,
I meant with when you get all these emails and it
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
creates
yeah.
the
I just want to play
desire
on
all
that.
of a sudden.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, and that, then we have to say no. And we only have so much willpower for no throughout the day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like I've been reading books about this. Like we only have so much energy to do this,
Yeah.
and we're having to do it all day long. I mean, why do you think we're getting hammered with notifications so
Yeah.
much and
Yeah, I
ads?
love to quote Dr. Benjamin Hardy there and say, willpower doesn't work. He has a book, Willpower Doesn't Work. I don't know whether
Yeah.
you heard of that one. And I had
Yes,
to
I have.
reframe it. So instead of saying no to all this, I'm trying to reframe it and say, what do I say yes to? I say yes to a
Right.
more calm life, a more peaceful
Mm-hmm.
life, less
Mm-hmm.
clutter, less stuff to deal with, less email to deal with, less whatever to deal with, because I know that that makes me less anxious, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I try to reframe it. But now I want to switch a little bit, because it is a danger. It makes us anxious and everything. But there is, in my opinion, there is also a bigger um, risk or danger out there that I think you and your company are helping people too, and that is with the passwords. Because I think I
Yeah.
saw on your Instagram that you posted 90% of people think they're safe, or their accounts are safe, even though they're not, because they're not handling their passwords correctly, right? And
Yeah.
but that's also something I come across, and I had to take my own advice and take me on the nose and fix it in my own life a while back, that were a little bit too wishy-washy with our passwords. So, and that
Yeah.
is, and especially if you have so many emails and so many accounts, like we have to create an account everywhere now too, and then
Yeah.
we're having to remember the password, and that's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the transition into it. So let's talk a little bit about that too. Is like with emails, I find like we can unsubscribe, we can delete, we can get our
Mm-hmm.
mental
Mm-hmm.
head around doing all this, but passwords is even more overwhelming, in my opinion, and more dangerous. It can affect our life and business really in a harsh way.
Truly. I mean, so I've got a client. who um, he had a social media management company, and he was business partners with someone else, and it was big. I mean, he'd take home $500,000 a year in profit from this business for his side of the partnership. So it was a phenomenal business. And his lead developer's Facebook account got hacked because he was using some stupid password like welcome. And and so the hackers got into the account. They made themselves managers of all of his clients' ads accounts,
Mm-hmm.
blocked the real managers, and started buying ads with his clients' credit cards.
Mm.
I mean, the business
Crazy.
imploded.
Yeah.
And there's a forced buyout. The whole thing, that business went bye-bye. A $500,000 salary a year from this particular company. And he's got to start over from scratch with a new company and try and figure out how to scale it and do the whole thing because of password issue.
Yeah, and get the trust back of future, or get the trust of future customers who may find out in the world of
That's
social
right.
media that he was the one that happened it
Yeah.
to it
Yeah.
in the past,
There's,
right? Yeah.
there's another lady, Shalene Johnson, who she's like a fitness influencer for, I think she was with Beachbody or something like that before,
Yeah, that could
just
be.
business
Yeah.
associates of
And
ours.
now she does business coaching, I think, too.
Oh,
And
really? Yeah.
yeah.
So she had her Instagram account hacked, and someone started posting hardcore porn on her
I.
Instagram account.
Mm-hmm.
And she lost a massive amount of her audience, and the total impact financially on her was $250,000
Mm,
from this account being hacked.
yeah.
So if we get back to the stats, 92% of people know how risky duplicate passwords are. 73% of them are still using the same passwords for multiple accounts despite the risk.
Mm,
And 32% of previous employees can access their old employers' accounts because old employees are still using Fluffy123 for all of the passwords for
yeah.
all of their business accounts. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just you can get away with it until you can't.
Yeah.
And then it's an absolute disaster. And it feels like this big friction to like set up a password manager, and people hate it so much. But a password manager is my absolute favorite thing. If there's one app I cannot live without, it's my password manager
Mm,
because it makes things so freaking easy.
yeah.
I have to remember one password, and the majority of the time, I just use my fingerprint or my face to log in,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps me incredibly secure with two-step verification on everything. When I'm working with contractors anywhere in the world, they can get into my accounts when they have the account, and I've set them up properly with the security measures. They don't even need to text me. I don't get any text for two-step verifications. They can
Mm-hmm.
just get what they need because they have access to the proper
Mm-hmm.
account and everything is in there. It is I mean, I hate the word game changer, but it truly deserves the term.
Yeah, yeah. And so see, like I said, I had to kind of push myself to fix my password thing a while
Yeah.
back. Because but my thing was, what if I forget that one password, right? Like we can
Oh, it's
come
the
up
one
with
you
all kinds
use.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
stupid reasons
Yeah.
why, right?
hmm
So,
Well,
yeah.
so I use the app called 1Password.
Mm-hmm.
And when you set up an account, they give you a 1Password emergency kit, which has the specific login address for your account. So there are so many pieces of information in order to like get a new account set up, and then you're golden from there.
Mm-hmm.
But you can it's a PDF, so you can easily print it out, write that password on there, and put it in your safe or in your safety deposit box, give it to your attorney, or put it somewhere else. Like, what happens to you if something happens to you
Yeah, yeah,
and all of your accounts? Like, how does someone get into all of your accounts
yeah,
and, and wrap things up?
yeah.
Well, if you have it with your attorney or in your safety deposit box, then it's really easy. It's fantastic contingency planning as well.
Yeah, yeah. So how what would be the first steps for somebody that says, "Okay, I really need to take care of these passwords now.
Uh-huh.
My resolution for 2025 or whatever."
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you suggest one password, right? So they sign up,
hmm
they get an account, and what would you suggest are the next steps
Yeah,
past
so
the
go to the
getting it?
website, get
Mm-hmm.
an account. You can start with a free account. Like even if you might want to use it for your family, but you're not sure if everyone's bought in, you can always upgrade later. So get a simple free trial for your own account. And then the first thing that you want to do is import your passwords from your web browser. So if you're using Safari, you can export the passwords from there. Or if you're using Chrome or Firefox, you can export all of those passwords and then pull them into 1Password. It's really easy, you guys.
Mm.
And they have all of the instructions right on the site. So they make it very easy. And then from there, once you fully set up the app, because there's an extension that you install for Safari or for Chrome. Once you've got that, then you may need to go in and turn off autofill from your web browser so you don't have two competing systems. And
Yeah.
that way you've only got it on one. And then finish the process. So if you've got an iPad or an Android and your phones and everything, install 1Password and go through the setup fully on all of your devices, and then you will be golden. Because
Yeah.
on my phone, it's all integrated.
Yeah.
So it uses Face ID, to log in, and so all of the passwords sync. It doesn't matter, where I'm working. And actually, right
Mm.
now I'm sitting in a studio from my in-laws. They've got a whole like podcast production studio. I'm doing some video recordings, so I needed to use this computer right in front of me to get into my account to pull up the video scripts that I'm recording and everything. Well, I log in and it says, "Hey, scan this code to log in from your phone." So I did that, and 1Password
Mm-hmm.
authenticated me, and I'm in on this computer in a private browsing window.
Mm.
So, and then when I close it, all my stuff is gone, and it's totally secure.
Yeah.
So it just makes our lives so much easier. It is a little bit of a project getting set up.
Yeah.
But when you do it, I mean, the rewards um, are daily. You experience them daily, every day for
Yeah.
years and years.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is really the thing because passwords get so much easier using it every day. You don't have to remember
Hmm.
anything anymore, which is, anyways,
Yep,
hard. The harder with the older we get, the harder it gets to remember what
that's right.
password do I have where. That's why people put the same one everywhere.
But it
But
doesn't even work anymore because
yeah,
in some you can use a star, and others you can't use a star, and
yeah, yeah,
others you
yeah.
can't use any characters at all. Or I've got a 20 character password, but then Microsoft limits it and you can only have a 12 character password. Why? Well, I don't know.
Maybe they
This
do
stuff is
that so that
crazy.
people are forced to change their passwords. You never know.
Hmm.
I don't know whether they even think that intentionally, but it's a total game changer in your daily life, totally, and also for the future. Unfortunately, you don't know how many hack attempts or whatever
Yeah.
you can prevent, right, in the future.
Hmm.
You don't really see that, but yeah, if you have ever, luckily I have never had to go through something where I got hacked, but
Yeah.
think if you
Yeah.
ever got hacked, or if you also, it's the same like with backup, making a backup of your data or having it secure somewhere. Once you lost everything, I think that's when the people usually are
Yeah.
motivated to change their
It's
way
true.
of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, then
yeah,
that client ended up hiring me because he ended up rebranding another business to
yeah,
scale the whole thing. And
yeah,
we rebranded it in Google Workspace. We got him set up with 1Password, and we met with all 7 employees to get them completely set up, do strong generated passwords, train them on how to integrate two-step verification and use it properly and all set up so that they could basically make sure that this never happens again.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
So,
let's, to all the listeners out there, let's prevent this from happening in the first place, right? So,
yeah,
like, you can do it yourself. You can also hire Shawn, or you can go to any other person that helps you with
that's
clutter
right.
and digital clutter. I mean, I do help too to a certain degree. You are probably more the expert in the digital clutter realm than me. I have
Mhm.
my own ways, but
Yeah.
yeah. So one more question that comes to my mind is, what are people not thinking of when they think of digital clutter? Like the obvious is photos on your phone, email inbox overflown, passwords, chaos in the passwords.
Yeah.
Is digital clutter they don't think of?
I think the biggest thing is what the effect is of signing up for something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If somebody tells you that you should start using Notion and you get in there and create an account and start using it, then you have just fragmented your filing system. If well, if you it probably already is fragmented, but it's just making it worse, and you've got one more place to check.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you should be pretty methodical about how you introduce a new tool to your life. I mean, the first thing would be consolidate everything so that you have it all in one place. But when you start to introduce a new tool, be careful and decide at the very beginning how you're going to experiment with this and exactly what are you going to put here so that you can give it a good assessment of if
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you should commit to and could really add value to your life or your business.
Yeah.
And after going through a trial period, maybe it's 30 days, 14 days that you're trying this tool out, then you should have some sort of a appointment on your calendar to say, okay, do I want to move forward with this? And if I do, is now the right time? Because in order to do this right, we really need to set it up properly. These
Mm-hmm.
tools can be incredible. I mean, they really can be life-changing. All these things that the marketers talk about, they're not lies, but it's just not the full truth, or it's not as easy as you might think. Like it's going to take some time to fully set it up, like discover how it should work and how it's going to fit into your existing workflows, or if you're going to create some new ones because this tool is so different and is going to upgrade things. But there's going to be a cost to it besides financial, and that's going to be time in order to, gather this stuff together in some learning. And I think that they can make a huge difference. But I think we need to be kind of careful about what we add into our tech stack, so to speak. It's a
Yeah.
new term that some people are throwing around, but it's the tools that we're using in our lives and businesses, and it can get out of control, and it just can make things worse if we're not intentional.
Yeah, I actually love that you say that because so many people like new shiny object, right? Some new tool comes out and they all think this
Uh-huh.
is now the cat's meow and it's gonna solve all their problems. Then they start playing with it and like you said, then they're even more scattered and nothing is properly moved over. A good example
Hmm.
is like I'm on Evernote for 11 years right now, and there was just a
Yeah.
flocking away from Evernote a while back because they had
Hmm.
some struggles and all that
Yeah.
and so many people I heard moved to other tools, but did they really, really move properly to other tools? Like, I
Right.
think you help people too to finish that migration that they kind of never accomplished, right? Or like,
That's
uh,
right. Yeah, not so much with Evernote, but like if you've got a ton of stuff in Dropbox and in OneDrive and on your computer and iCloud and stuff, and you really want to start using Google Workspace fully and get all
mm,
of your files there,
yeah,
or you're using Microsoft 365 from your GoDaddy account because you just bought it, but you want to move to Google and you're starting to use Google Drive, but you just want everything there, we can get all of that moved over. The
mm,
emails properly set up, so
mm-hmm,
with the right security protocols, so you show up in people's inboxes and don't get flagged as spam. A lot of people skip certain security protocols.
yeah,
So we set up all that stuff for
yeah,
people.
yeah,
And then take them through process of getting organized. So what does business look like now? Because we've
yeah.
all got stuff that we've been creating over the years that really aren't relevant in our business or in our lives day to day. So we may not want to delete it, but so let's archive it. Let's get it out of the way and really focus on creating some workflows that are tailored to how we work today and set us up
Yes.
for the future.
That's something I say a lot also with physical clutter is like
Hmm.
we go through stages in life and in
Yeah.
business. It's not the same year over year over year. So clutter, the definition of clutter is something that you once used. Hopefully, at least there's even clutter that nobody ever used
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
clutter from the beginning. But a lot of the clutter is just something from our old life back then that we used was very helpful and we are now clinging on to because, oh my God, maybe we could use it again. And I think the good
Right.
thing with digital clutter is really that we can archive it. We don't have to necessarily let it go all the way if we feel too anxious
Hmm.
about it, which is a little bit easier than with physical clutter where people actually rent these storage boxes and whatever, spend lots of money to
Yeah.
store certain things that 10 years later they still haven't used, but they have spent, I don't know how much money on. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The amount of so if we think about what is it? Storage units, the cost of them and the amount of time that it just because it's set it and forget it, the amount of time we have these fees that we pay, sometimes they actually outweigh the cost of what's actually being stored in there in the first place.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just wild. My
Yeah,
wife
it's
and
the
I, we
same.
actually,
Yeah, it's the
oh,
so, excuse me for interrupting. It's the same
yeah,
like when we're joking about the average American can't put their car, which is probably worth $80,000, into the garage because the garage is filled with all kinds of crap that has not even the value. Like the car is to be out in the weather to to safely store the clutter in their garage, right? So that's
yeah,
kind of like the logic
yeah,
that a lot of
yeah.
people have. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. My wife and I, we sold our house in 2016 and we bought an Airstream trailer to go travel around the country and work remotely for a couple of years.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we ended up selling almost everything because we did the math and we're like, how much is
Hmm.
it actually going to cost to store all of this stuff?
Hmm.
So we let friends like borrow yard tools and all the stuff that I didn't want to have to borrow again. Gave those to my brother to use for in the meantime. And but a lot of the furniture, a lot of stuff, it all just went bye-bye because it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. 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 There's
Now the
you can always keep some emotional things that you're emotionally attached to, right? There might
Sure,
always be some things
yeah,
you
yeah, and we
inherited
did,
from parents and stuff. Storing that is probably way less expensive than just putting everything in storage.
yeah,
I hear it a
yeah.
lot, like, why did I even put this here in storage? I would never want this in my new house. And then they get rid of it after they just spent, I don't know how many months, a lot of money storing it, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I
So
want
with
to
the
be
digital,
mindful about the time. One question I always ask, very at the end, Jean, is what did I not ask? What you wanted me to ask you? What is burning inside of you that you want to get out that people need to hear in your case around digital clutter?
uh, yeah, I would say, how do you stay organized after you do the project? You sit down and take the time to set up your password manager or your folder structure, or you get to inbox zero. How do you actually stay there?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is we have to make it as easy as possible. And so that means changing little preferences in our web browsers to say, instead of just downloading to my downloads folder or to my desktop, and then it just becoming this cluttered mess, ask me where to put this file. So that way you can put it away the first time in the right spot and name it something that you'll actually remember. And when it comes to having a place to store it and the file names and all that stuff, we've got the guide that you can go to the show notes to get. And I'll give you all those tips of how do you actually do this. This is the exact process we take our clients through. Um, so we need to do this and have the spot and know how to save it. And then it's not something that we have to deal with. We don't have to stay organized and keep doing it every Friday. I'm going to clean up my downloads folder.
Yeah,
I don't have to clean up my downloads folder
yeah,
because nothing goes there. It just
exactly.
asks me where to put things, and I'll put something on my desktop that I'm going to use temporarily, and then I see it and I trash it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's a receipt for a contractor who just finished a 2 week stint of doing something for me, then it's going to go into my expenses folder and it's named appropriately. So it's
Mm-hmm.
having these little changes after you do the project that make it so that you can keep up to speed with this
Mm-hmm.
and attacking those subscriptions that you get. Like if you see a new offender in your inbox,
Mm-hmm.
you should unsubscribe from that immediately.
Yeah.
Don't be tempted to keep to keep it. Main thing is just a quick action, and if there's friction there, figure out how to make it that much easier. Create a shortcut on your desktop for the folder that you access frequently that's stored in Google Drive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or in your Dropbox or whatever. By the way, you can download the Google Drive app to your computer, so it'll sync all of the contents from Google Drive to your desktop, just like Dropbox does, and
Mm-hmm.
OneDrive and some of the other things. So if you like using that platform, make sure to install the apps
Mm-hmm.
because creating these shortcuts, creating bookmarks and stuff like this, make it so that doing the work is really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find that clutter is piling up, ask yourself, why is this happening? It's probably going to be because it's not easy enough, and that's the problem that you need to solve.
Yeah.
Is how do I make this a little bit easier so
Yeah.
that it's basically effortless to stay organized. And that's what I want for you. That's what I have, and what our team has, and what we do for our clients.
Yeah.
And we want that for you too.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like my motto is a few minutes a day keeps the chaos away. That's exactly what I do. I set everything up, making it simple. And we need
Yeah.
to change our habits, right? So once we, that's where a lot of people fail when they go through the big effort of decluttering, whether that's physical or digital. They
Hmm.
go through this, but then they never change their habits. So a month later, everything is like a jumble again, and they have to
Yep.
go through the whole thing again. So the second step is really, like you just said, simplifying everything, changing the habits, creating different little processes so that the clutter doesn't creep back in.
Hmm.
So, so this was really awesome, Shawn. Thank you so much for your time coming on here and sharing your expertise with my audience and with me.
Absolutely.
I
It's a
always love it.
pleasure.
I'm always on the hunt. How can we make our life easier? How can we make sure less clutter enters our life? So it
Yeah.
was really a joy to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And make sure to go download that file organization
Yes,
guide by going to
the link is
thedigitalorganizer.com/chaos to peace.
chaos to peace. Thank you so much for that link, and I will put it in the show notes. Hey, I'm Connie, your host, and I wanted to thank you for listening to the podcast today. Did you know you can bring your chaos to me? If you struggle with chaos in your office, on your desk, in your files and finances, use the link in the show notes and sign up for a complimentary 30 minutes Chaos to Peace Jumpstart call